we're moving on to Indiana here, so you know, I really just want to try to focus on the Indiana game. Of course, we try to talk to our guys about just overall, really at the beginning of the season, and then weekly about you know, making sure that they understand, you know, what their media obligations are and things like that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's a free country, and you know, Matt can say what he wants, and that's what he did. You know, he's an emotional kid, but look, it's time to move on to Indiana, and that's it.
Mark Brennan of Fight on State here with our weekly Bill O'Brien press conference wrap, joined as usual by Greg Pickel of FOS. Biggest news today, I would have to say, Kyle Carter, tight end, looks like he's done for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot of a surprise. O'Brien wouldn't specify what exactly the injury was out of respect for Carter and his mother, is what O'Brien used to not specify the injury. But you saw he was in a lot of pain there at the end of the Nebraska game. Anyone that watched it saw the pain he was in. So I don't think it comes as a huge surprise, but it is certainly the biggest news of the day heading into Indiana.
Yeah, I was down on the sideline at the end of the Nebraska game, and he went off the field. His arm, I forget which one, was in a sling, kind of packed in ice. It looked like they were looking at his wrist on the TV broadcast. Don't know if there was anything with the shoulder with the sling. But long story short, Kyle Carter gone. You know, I guess it's not good news, but they've had some other tight ends really step up. We've talked about it throughout the year. The Jesse James, the Laymans, and Bill O'Brien today talked about kind of the dirty work that Gary Gilliam's done. So you don't want to lose anybody, but Penn State's a little kind of fortunate in that they've developed some really good depth already, or throughout the course of the year at tight end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he talked about Matt Layman. He's #1 listed on the depth chart for this week in the pregame notes. And Matt Layman, I think, has been a quiet player. He has 3 touchdowns. He has a couple less catches than Kyle Carter does, but he's been a very reliable player so far this year, and I think that's the important thing. You don't need someone that can be Kyle Carter. You need someone that can get close to producing the way Kyle Carter does.
Yeah, because Carter does so many different things. I mean, he's not necessarily a great blocker, but in the passing game, he's able to do so much, and it's good that they have some people who could kind of step up and help fill that role. Your heart goes out to Kyle Carter, but you know what? As a redshirt freshman, he had a great year. His season's obviously over, but Penn State still has 2 more games. And speaking of which, Bill O'Brien said once again the focus this week is on putting a tough loss out of Nebraska behind them. Said they came out, we're taping this on Tuesday, they came out Monday, practiced really well. He was happy to see that. He said he brought the team kind of together and said how important it was to put that Nebraska loss behind him with Indiana coming to town this week.
Yeah, certainly. We've seen that to be the trend this season from O'Brien, especially after the Ohio State loss, this week again after the Nebraska loss. He wants to put it behind him and not really talk about it. He did touch on a few things about the Ohio State game, which we'll get to. But yeah, he said they had a very good, crisp practice yesterday, and one of the biggest things he said he was focused on was another good practice today. So I think that one thing we can really notice about this team, as long as we are willing to believe O'Brien's word, is that they bounce back really quick with that Sunday day off. And they really get back at it Monday and get ready to go for the next opponent regardless of the week before's outcome.
Yeah, the other thing that really jumped out at me before we break down any X's and O's stuff, he was asked about his name being floated out there for some NFL jobs on the conference call portion of the press conference. And he didn't really give a great answer in my view. He said he's focused on these last 2 games. And I tried to push it a little bit there in the media room and said, do you feel as if you have to make some sort of definitive statement given the unique situation you're in? And he basically said, I'm flattered if my name's being mentioned with any NFL jobs, but he went right back to that I'm focused on these last 2 seasons. I think you're going to see a lot of people writing that he did not give any definitive, yes, I will be back next year. Now, I don't, again, we're reading between the lines.
Right.
This may be something, it may not be anything, but I think a lot of people sitting in that room, just the scuttlebutt, were a little bit surprised that he wasn't more definitive and, hey, yeah, I'll be back, given that players have an opportunity to transfer, that a lot of recruits are paying attention. So, I don't want to come across as stirring up trouble, but I did think it was something that he could ask, and gave him an opportunity to say that he would be back, and he didn't take it.
Yeah, a lot of you guys on the boards have brought this up already as well. As Mark said, it was brought up in the room pretty quickly. Just the fact that he didn't come out and quash it right away. I think a lot of people may have expected him to do that. Again, it's just us reading between the lines and inferring with what he said compared to what he could have said or what we may have expected him to say. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Mark, and a lot of the other folks that it just comes off as odd that he just didn't completely quash it. We know he's focused on these last 2 games. There's no doubt about that. He's been focused on the next game after every game this week. There's no hiding. There's nothing out of the element about that. But again, he just didn't come out and exactly quash it like we thought he might have. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth bringing up and mentioning.
Yeah, in fairness to Bill O'Brien, when we were out at Big Ten Media Days back in July, one thing he said that kind of that caught my ear was that when he goes into press conferences or situations where he'll be dealing with the media, he tries to think in advance of what he may be asked. And I'm wondering if he was so focused on the season that he didn't even give it any thought. Because once again, you know, when he was asked about whether he expects the students to kind of rally behind his team or what message he would give to students who may not be thinking about coming to this week's game against Indiana, and then more importantly the post-Thanksgiving game against Wisconsin, he clearly had his talking points in order. He went straight to the fact that this is a great team, it's a great university, you know, all these talking points that he's had. And I wonder with the NFL stuff if he just doesn't have those talking points quite in order, but I could bet you that he's going to have them in order the next time he talks to the press.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, you had mentioned some stuff. I think you inadvertently said about the Ohio State game, but you meant Nebraska. What were some of the things with respect to the Nebraska game that he talked about that maybe jumped out at you?
Sure. Well, of course, the one everyone's going to want to know about is the fact that he was asked directly if his sideline was warned on the sideline penalty that Penn State incurred in the middle of that Nebraska game. He said they weren't, so it really calls into question again why that penalty was called. But he didn't really get into a whole lot of specifics with Nebraska. He was asked about Matt McGloin after the game. And you know,
his strong comments,
and how O'Brien felt about that. And O'Brien relied again on his free country line. He's used that before, and he didn't really say anything one way or the other to give us an opinion or a view as to how he views players saying different things or different levels of opinion. So I think that was really the biggest thing in my mind, just the fact that A, there was no sideline warning, and then B, that he really just kind of skated around the McGloin thing.
Yeah, he was asked specifically if the reason Matt McGloin was not available this week to the media, which I think is the first time this year, one of the first time. It's only been 1 or 2 times if he's not been available. Had anything to do with his strong comments, you know, that we'll never get that call is what he said about the Matt Lehman fumble, non-fumble, whatever it was against Nebraska. And O'Brien said, no, it's just kind of coincidence. I mean, I guess we take him at his word. It does seem kind of interesting that he's not available. He was also asked a very direct question. He's getting peppered with some very direct stuff about whether he thinks, you know, a lot of fans out there think it's kind of us against the world if people are kind of out to get Penn State or whatever, or have agendas. And he specifically said, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact wording, that no, he doesn't think anybody has an agenda against Penn State.
Yeah, I think his exact words were, no, I would tell our fans, no one's out to get Penn State, no one's out to get Penn State. And I think you go back to your talking points, I think he definitely had that one teed up for when somebody would ask it. And I thought the response was good, and I think that basically it pretty much goes off of what he said, if I'm not mistaken, in the post-game against Nebraska. He's building off of that and just trying to get that message out there that I don't think he's buying into any of these theories or you know, ideas that people are throwing out there that there's some sort of conspiracy or bias against Penn State from the Big Ten.
Yeah, in terms of Indiana, he was not asked about Indiana until probably a good 20-25 minutes into it. He talked about how they have great defensive tackles, they do a really nice job offensively, he likes Kevin Wilson, blah, 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 blah. He said all the right things about Indiana. And with all due respect to Indiana, they have played very well against some teams, and I think Penn State would be foolish to look past this team. That said, Indiana's coming off a very physical beatdown at the hands of Wisconsin. You have to wonder where they're going to be. I mean, I'm not sure if anything he said about Indiana.
No, I mean, to be completely honest with you, it wasn't a very notable portion of the press conference. I think you make a good point in saying it didn't come to about 20-25 minutes in, and he really hit on all the coach speak points that you thought he would. I don't even think he really broke down any players or anyone that he was really focusing on.
Outside of D tackles, he talked about the D tackles having a lot of sacks, but really that was about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it was very. We talked a lot about O'Brien speaking about, in these prior videos, him looking ahead and looking at the opponent ahead. And this week we looked ahead, but we looked ahead at Penn State. we didn't look so much ahead at Indiana. I think that was probably the underlying Indiana theme that jumped out, was the fact that it was more about Penn State going forward.
And obviously, that'll probably change next week with a good Wisconsin team coming in, senior day, that sort of thing. The only player today was Shane McGregor. Had some nice stuff to say about his journey through Penn State as a walk-on. He's a journalism student, but it's kind of curious that they brought him in. Again, he's a great story, but I don't know what he has, because I don't think you're going to see him play this week unless there's some sort of crazy blowout, which I guess conceivably could happen. But he was the only player, so not much more to report on that front. A little aside, and nobody tell on us here, but last week we did this thing in the end zone, and they had to put up special barriers here. I'll show you when we're done. And they came over and said, "Do you know who the guys were who were in the end zone?" We went, "No, we have no idea who was in the end zone last week." So apparently, all these barriers, they're our fault. So as we get out of here, we'll do a quick view of the barriers, and we'll give you a look at what's going on out on the field right now, because they're doing a lot of work on the field, which we didn't ruin the field at all. I mean, I'm not going to take any blame for that. So anyway, I'm rambling on. What else is new? I'm Mark Brennan. This is Greg Pickel. We're from Fight on State, and we will see you again next week. Hold on now. Don't turn it off. With this, look at this. And then some serious work. So long, everybody.